Call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum here. Thank everybody for waiting for us. We were at a work session, and so we kind of ran a little bit late tonight, but we're ready to roll. Rick, can you walk us through the agenda, please?
Certainly can. I'll remind the board that we did have a work session on the 29th of February, which time we did some discussion around our budget and finance plans, as well as received a leadership update. And then earlier this evening, we began at 5 o'clock, and we took an overview of our construction plans, especially as relates to the furniture that we're proposing to bring forward. We also discussed some policies, talked a little bit about our education partnerships that we have, and then did a little bit of a leadership update. For tonight's meeting, the board will act on its minutes. We also will recognize our boys alpine ski team as state champions. We'll have any hearing from the audience. From there, we'll move to the consent agenda. At that time, board members, we will have a couple consent agenda items to pull off the consent agenda, and we'll talk about that at the time of the action, a variety of items again there. Our report and discussion, we'll do the monthly leadership update. We'll also talk about the plans for the 2016-17 general fund budget alignment. We've been talking about that since January. We'll take a look at the proposed curriculum reading program materials that the team has been studying. We're looking at board meeting dates starting for 16-17. That begins July 1. And then we'll look at some policies, our action items. Again, we'll be looking at some budget as relates to the integration budget. We'll also be doing some work on our roofs this summer, and so we're approving some bids there. We'll be taking action on our guiding change document related to grading and reporting. Some work on the world language proficiency. We've got a potential agreement with the athletic boosters that we might begin asking the board to table that until we get some final details worked out, and then finally policy. And that will take us through the board agenda for tonight.
Thank you very much. The first item is the minutes. We have the February 22nd regular meeting. We have the February 22nd, 2016 work session, and the February 29th work session. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Next on our item is recognition.
So I'd ask Meredith Svinsand and the boys ski team to come forward. Back again. So it's been a little bit light on the snow, but it didn't make a difference as far as your team goes with the season. Coach, why don't you tell us just a little bit about how the season went for the team?
Yeah, so like you just said, without the snow in the beginning of the season, it kind of, we had like maybe 3 weeks we could have been in snow, and we actually were in the school cafeteria doing dry land. But I think the biggest thing was that these guys have been, ski racing for so many years that even though, we weren't on snow, we were doing all these other things that were helping us, making us stronger so that when we did get on gates, we were the best that we can be. These guys showed up at every single practice, not only my practice, but then went after my practice and went to a club practice. So every day after school, they're going and skiing 4+ hours. And on top of that, then going and skiing out west on most weekends. So I'm not really surprised with the way that the things turned out this year, but really excited about it.
Okay, let's go down the ladder, and we'll just name, grade level, and if you're graduating as a senior, you've got plans for next year already figured out.
My name's Soren Lindquist. I'm a sophomore.
My name's Daniel Brunker, and I'm a junior.
I'm Andrew Scheidemann. I'm a sophomore.
Chris Ridgely, and I'm a sophomore. I'm Jack Keenan. I'm a junior.
This could be a repeat. Are you just telling me, Coach?
That's what I'm kind of thinking.
Jack, talk a little bit about the season. So what is this passion that drives you guys so hard that you're willing to just keep giving of that time and the love that you have for the event?
We just all have a lot of fun doing it, so we want to keep training so that we can do better and keep having fun.
And so what does that mean once the season's over? Is the season ever over for you guys? What's the training going once the snow starts melting?
Most of us go out to Oregon or Switzerland during the summer and train.
What's team mean? Because it's a pretty lonely sport if it's not about team. How do you guys build team? What are some of those activities?
We do a lot of team building exercises at dry land and stuff to get to know each other, because really when we get to competition, like, your team is really important. You rely on them a lot too. have a successful race.
So how about talking a little bit about dry land? What is that dry land experience? How do you stay motivated to give your best in that effort?
During dryland, we do a lot of exercise to strengthen our legs and core, which is what we use most in skiing. And I stay motivated because I just know it's going to help me ski faster.
Okay, let's talk about the state tournament. How are you feeling about it? Were you nervous going into it? Who was your top competition? When was the feeling like, yep, we've got this in the bag?
Well, we all had a feeling in the beginning that we were going to win because we were all confident in our abilities. And we were going up against some pretty hard teams, but, you know, we knew as soon as we all finished all of our rounds.
Coach, how does the interest of this sport grow? I mean, we keep hearing about this global warming, or we don't have the snow that we once had, and yet we've got kids with this high degree of interest. Something that comes from you and from the leadership, from the families, everything. Can you talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, for me, the interest stems from the fact that I was in their shoes, not many years ago. And so I kind of know what they're going through day in and day out, the injuries they have, what they deal with, in the classroom. Like I mentioned earlier, they're traveling a lot, and that's something that a lot of other students don't deal with. But I mean, gosh, I hope that global warming doesn't affect this sport.
I don't think so.
Because for me, it's fun. Being able to watch some people that I used to ski with now, gunning to get to the Olympics, and I see it in these guys' eyes. I see it in, some of the other kids' eyes and on my team, wanting to be the best, and they have that, opportunity to do that, like even in the Midwest here. So that's really, really special, even at a, smaller school like Edina.
Well, team, congratulations on the state championship, and enjoy the summer, and we look forward to seeing you come back again next year. We've got a picture time right here.
Do we act like we like each other? Thank you.
Next on the agenda is hearing from members of the audience. We do encourage people to speak from the audience. The process is to submit a request before the meeting. We do have one request today. Each speak should be limited to 3 minutes. We ask that you not speak about people individually, that if you have an individual complaint about a person, you bring it to either the board or the superintendent. We typically do not have board discussion, but someone will get back to you. So today's speaker is Ms. Hackett. Come on up, grab a microphone. Yep, that's what you gotta do. Make sure it's on.
Can you have a seat?
Yep,
Testing.
sounds like it's on.
I sent you all a email on Thursday, and I have printed it out as well as the articles that I attached for you to read. If you didn't get a chance to read it already, or if you want to read it later. So I was just going to read from that email, and I did mention somebody's name in it, but I will just mention a person that I spoke with. So it reads, "Hello, my name is Clover Hackett, and I am a parent to 2 children at Concord Elementary, 4th and 2nd graders. I also have a younger child who will be in kindergarten fall of 17. I wanted to contact you because I'm very concerned about the new artificial fields that are being put in this summer at the Community Center, Southview, and Edina High. It is my understanding that EPS will approve bids on an infill type very soon. I have been in touch with somebody at facilities for Edina Public Schools regarding this issue. As I have discussed with him, there have been countless articles published about health and safety concerns with crumb rubber infill, which is currently the most popular choice for artificial turf. There are different types of infill available, one of which I included in your packet, for the same application, which seem to be safer in case of accidental ingestion by children, as well as safer in terms of environmental concerns. The person I spoke with at EPS was nice enough to talk through the issue with me initially. However, he did not want to commit to the idea that crumb rubber would not be used. And as of 2 weeks ago, he is now not returning any of my correspondence. This is a huge concern for me and other Edina parents, and I feel that in a community full of educated, intelligent, and thoughtful Midwesterners, we should be operating on the precautionary principle. We should not be ripping out huge amounts of natural grass fields and replacing them with a substance that has not yet been proven to be safe for our children to play on. I have recently been in touch with parents in Minnetonka, and due to rising concern over this issue, they will be converting all of their playgrounds and fields that contain crumb rubber to a safer alternative this summer. In Southwest Minneapolis, there has also been a successful Change.org petition that is slated to do the same. President Obama has just convened a task force of the CDC, EPA, and CPSC to study the toxicity of crumb rubber, and the Minnesota State Legislature has also just allocated $50,000 in their budget to study the issue as well. I also know that the cities of Los Angeles, New York City, and city of Santa Monica, where I just moved from, are all looking to transition their fields and playgrounds away from crumb rubber. I would hope that Edina Public Schools would follow suit. However, because I cannot get a straight answer from this person that I spoke to, I'm concerned that EPS may be looking more to bottom line than safety concerns. These studies that are being convened right now will most likely bear conclusive evidence that crumb rubber is toxic by the end of the year. I urge you to find a different solution to replacing these fields. Either keep them grass or use a more environmentally friendly infill. Please do not approve a bid for crumb rubber. Our children and community deserve better. And I said I will be attending the school board on March 22nd because I wasn't sure of the date, but I'm here now. So I'm happy to talk through the issue with any of you if you have further questions.
Thank you very much. We will follow up. I'll make sure that whoever isn't returning the calls, at least you get a feedback from somebody.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Looks like we have a room full of ninth grade students. I want to welcome them to tonight's meeting. It's glad to see faces in the crowd. And so does anybody have a question they might want to throw out? All right. You can save it for later. The next item is the consent agenda. First, are there any requests to remove as opposed to table, but anything to remove from the consent agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to remove two items. One would be under G1, the Augustana College of Sioux Falls agreement. We'd like to remove that from the agenda, or table that, I should say. Wish to table that.
Okay.
And then the second would be the field trips, which is the field trips to Civil Rights Research Tour and the Civil Rights Research Movimento. Those two trips, we'd like to put that to information, so we're going to move that to the information as that's not an actionable item.
Okay, so I1 and 2 are moved down to information.
That's correct. That would be under 8D. Move to 8D.
Okay. Are there any other requests to table any items?
Yeah, the agreement with the Edina boosters was the other item we wanted to do.
That's correct. We want to table that as well.
And so can I get a motion to table
So
those two items? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, those are tabled. All right, now, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes, and we are on to reports and discussion.
Okay.
Correct.
So if we get the leadership update popped in. I want to do a quick update on our construction plans that are evolving. We are looking at continuing to move forward with the land transportation, purchase the land for the facilities, let me try that again. The transportation facilities, there we go. It's been a long day already here. So we're moving forward with the land purchase for the transportation facility within the district. That is working, going to the city to take further action, but again, then we hope to have that finalized yet this spring. Tomorrow, the bids will be open for our 3 elementaries, Concord Elementary, Countryside, and Highland Elementary. Construction projects, we'll open those. The board will be acting on that in the following week. We are looking at East Campus turf, and so we will continue to address that. Still doing some study with the city on some variants around that, and we'll make sure we have the necessary follow-up on those turf fields. That would be here on the East Campus. It would also be replacing the Coleman turf field. We boarded her earlier tonight a little bit about the new furniture selection process. We've been doing a thorough study of furniture, working very closely with staff and the students on this project as we take a look at updating our furniture to make that align with how our students are learning and the best way to create a positive learning environment. Again, we're also looking at furniture at our middle school and high school, but those will not be purchased till the following year. We're also going to be planning on purchase for the student commons area, which is being remodeled at the high school, and that will be ready for fall 2016. Summer plans for 2016, we'll be getting information out to the staff as well as to the public in the weeks to come, which is a detailed plan of how everything's rolling forward and information people will need to know as we continue with this next generation construction plan. It's going to start getting busy here this spring, and we'll stay busy right through 2017. Again, communication will be our key, and so we'll continue to find vehicles to make sure people know how our progress is being made. We're starting to work with the public a little bit more on public presentation as well. If you go to the website, there's some great videos. We appreciate the work of the communication department in putting those together. So that's kind of the latest with the construction side. There'll be no strong action tonight on the board. From a teaching and learning standpoint, I'd ask Randy Smosel just to step up a little bit. We have an action item here a little bit later, but maybe, Aaron, if you can give just a quick update on some of the things happening in the teaching and learning department.
Good evening. Teaching and learning, we are working on a couple of different things. We have a guiding change document that we'll be asking the board to approve around the grading and assessment work that we'll continue to do to offer personalized learning. As a little bit of background, from February 16th, we had all of our staff at the secondary level and at the elementary level talk about personalized learning, how they're currently implementing personalized learning, where they would like to head next with personalized learning, and what are some district supports and strategic supports that they need to continue on that journey. We've analyzed all that data, and we are working now on a formal plan around how we're going to move personalized learning as a school district. We have some exciting opportunities for students who have world language proficiencies to do some testing this spring in April and get recognized with a certificate or seal from the state of Minnesota for their world language competency, and that's in our agenda this evening. And we're continuing our work around our gifted and talented study.
Thank you, Randy. Just a quick leadership update. We're in the midst of planning for 2016-17 on our staff, and so Gwen Jackson and her team are busy meeting with principals as we shape plans with students. Our students at the secondary level are going through the registration process, so that's helping to shape schedules, which will drive our staffing plans, and we expect to have that covered over the next couple weeks. The leadership hiring process, we are currently in active searches for the Southview Middle School principalship as well as the Highlands Elementary principalship. Soon after, we'll be looking at the Valley View assistant principalship. Again, these are very important positions for our school district going forward, and so we're going to be actively involving staff, students, and parents with this process. Also, on a regular basis, we do update our crisis and emergency response plan. Earlier this month, we did have the committee got together and reviewed the entire plan from step one to the final step, and we did a couple 360 review of situations that we'd had over the last couple months, just again assessing our readiness and our responsiveness to situations so that we indeed, if something would occur, we'd be able to respond. We continue to get unbelievable cooperation from the City of Edina and their emergency response teams on helping us in addressing this. This again is not something we just do once a year, but it's an ongoing tabletop experiences and practice to make sure that we are ready at the site level as well as the district level to respond. The last one is HopDina, which is a partnership between the Hopkins School District and the Edina School District. Continue to have some great partnership growing there in the area of technology, staff development, and in our equity work. And so those are three areas that the administration have been working collaboratively on to share some of our resources back and forth. And I think it's a huge win-win for both school districts, and we'll continue to promote that partnership going forward. I'm going to turn it over now to Steve Butner, who's going to give us an update on some of the work around technology. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Dressen, School Board. Tonight, it's my privilege to provide a quick update on technology, in particular 2 major initiatives that we'll be undertaking this year, or actually we're undertaking. But I thought I would share a couple of numbers of just the importance of technology in our ecosystem. In 2010, when I arrived, we had around 3,000 Windows devices. As of right now, we have over 12,857 devices. And I'll point out that of those, iPads that didn't exist in 2011 and Chromebooks that didn't exist in 2012. If you take that and divide that by our staff and our students, you'll see that we are more than a one-to-one district. Also, we continue to consume internet bandwidth so that we can engage and access information anytime, anywhere. When I started in 2010, our internet pipe was 50 megs. In 2014, we had a little over 350 megs, and today, on any given day, we are consuming over a gigabit of internet traffic every day. You'll also notice that it's made a considerable shift between a wired world and a wireless world. Most of our devices now are consuming the internet on wireless devices, as we all are this evening. But it's not just about the devices, though I'm incredibly proud about what DMTS does to be able to ramp up and to continue to provide support in an increasingly complex environment. It's about how we use those devices instructionally, and that framework is e-learning squared. E-learning squared, again, has 3 major components. How do we use digital, how do we look at content and apply digital content where appropriate? How do we work with our teachers to identify how to use digital content, provide professional development, and leveraging that and integrating technology in the classroom? And also, how do we mitigate negative aspects of technology? And so there's a major push by our district, our media specialists, on digital citizenship and the proper use of technology. And finally, it's ensuring that our students, where appropriate, have access to a digital device that they can use in their instruction. I'd like to share with you some of the survey data that we're still compiling, but I thought it was pretty promising. Of the 302 parents that have responded to date, 39% strongly that they believe that we should continue e-learning squared, and 21% somewhat. So that is over 80% in the positive direction. What's more important, 87% of those responded believe that their child has greater learning opportunities while in school because of e-learning squared. For our students, 88% are satisfied with the device they use, and 86% agree that having a device makes them work harder in school. And if how technology has changed, 78% positive reading and a 14% negative reading. So we're going to continue e-learning squared, providing the professional development, working with our teachers to convert where appropriate into digital content and use digital tools. But we're also going to ensure that our students have access to devices. This slide shows our framework of how we provide digital devices. In our K through 2, we have what's called a Pick 2. That allows any grade level each year to pick 2, either a cart of Chromebooks or iPad minis. We'll be providing our 3rd grade classrooms with a cart of Chromebooks, and then we'll be opening up the Best Buy web store next fall to our 6th and 9th grade families. This will be the 3rd year of a 3-year phase, and after this, we will have implemented our e-learning squared. Of course, we'll continue to modify, continue to evaluate it, but we feel pretty proud that we're able to move along on 3 years on e-learning squared. As you know, the district is implementing a student information system called Infinite Campus, and I'm pretty proud of the progress we've had so far. But we felt that as we were implementing a student information system, we wanted to also look at our instructional tools as well, and what type of instructional tools are going to bring us to our vision and mission. In particular, we had a couple of goals that are in our technology vision, which is simplifying one-point portal for our students and parents to access information about their child's learning, to provide a consistent way for our families to access information about their students' learning and track progress of our students' standards and competencies. We're calling this future e-learning Edina Apps 2.0. We think it's going to deliver some wins not just for our staff, our teachers, and our students, but our parents as well in the area of a unified calendar. So our parents and our district can have one calendar that brings all the events and the events happening and the assignments in a classroom into one calendar that a parent can subscribe to on their phone or access from a web page. Simplified communications, so our teachers can communicate effectively with our parents and our students through one portal. That newsletters and updated websites can be done, and again, parents can access this. One thing we've heard quite a bit from our secondary families is, I need access to Moodle to find out where my homework is. Our tool, our LMS systems that we're looking at will provide that access for our parents. Something we're really excited about is a live grade book, not just 6 through 12, but K through 12, that shows our traditional grading as well as our competencies towards standards. Our plan is to continue to upgrade the SIS, and we're in the process of evaluating 2 final products that potentially will replace Moodle. That is Canvas and Schoology. Both are being used considerably in the Twin Cities. Schoology is being used quite a bit. Through that, then, we would determine and define the communications and data practices for our staff, provide training for them, and work with them to migrate data from Moodle into the new LMS. We're excited about opening up the portal not just to our staff, board members, and our students, but also to our parents as well, so they have one dashboard to access that information and continue to link those systems together through that portal as much as possible. And then phase 2 is working closely with teaching and learning and the assessment research group is to have an analytics engine that reads all that information and creates a profile for our students. Those are the 2 major initiatives, the learning management system and SIS and e-learning squared, that I wanted to provide to you tonight. And I answer any questions at this time.
No questions. I just think it's really nice that we're having that our software is moving towards helping us find personalized learning. So particularly with the live grading, really provide the opportunity for everyone to know, to catch the kids before the report card comes. And so I'm hoping that allows more time for really to get parents up to speed. So.
Yeah, it's our hope that we always call it engage in a community of or a partnership for learning, and so that's exactly that. Is we want to be able to not catch our parents off guard when a child might be showing signs of needing some additional help, and we think all of our kiddos are going to be successful, so how do we help push that information out to our families and allow them to be engaged as well?
Steve, as we move towards these new platforms, how will you bring along the students who, are current middle schoolers who are already very familiar with the platforms that they're using, and also their parents, who often are a bit more on the dinosaur side of things, but that we can come along with them?
That's a great question. We are working closely with our staff right now in this transition. We hope to have a decision point on the LMS before spring break. We'll be bringing that forward to the board if we move forward, and then it'll be a communications plan. I'm already engaged with PTOs and other parent organizations to be communicating with them about this change. But then we'll be providing training as well. And so we're thinking about how Get Connected Days might look differently in the fall so that we can have perhaps training for parents and students. And so we'll have our students looking at digital citizenship and the new platform, and our parents looking at how they can access the system, getting signed up. It'll be some mailings, and so we will probably be mailing usernames and passwords out to parents so that they can get into the portal as well. But we're really excited about having one portal that serves the whole stakeholder constituency of the district.
Other questions? Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Mary, you're next with Achievement and Integration Budget.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to present information on the FY17 Achievement and Integration Budget. Later tonight, it will come before you as an action item along with the revision of the FY16 Achievement and Integration Budget. Edina will receive next year approximately $970,000 in initial revenue, We also have a chance to capture $93,000 in incentive aid, and I will talk about that. It speaks nicely to the partnership with Hopkins that Dr. Dressen had alluded to earlier. Of our total $1 million that we receive, approximately 80% or more must go to direct student programming. No more than 10% can go to administrative costs, and between administrative costs and professional development, you can't spend more than 20% of the budget. So if we spend less in admin costs than 10%, we can move that into the professional development as long as between those two it doesn't go over 20% of the budget. At the top, you can see with our budget, we will spend almost 84% of our budget will be on direct student contact. All of the parts of this program that we are talking about tonight are part of a 3-year plan that was submitted to the school board in March of 2014. That plan will conclude in June of 2017. So this will be the last year of our 3-year plan. An update of progress of the plan is given annually when we present information on the world's best workforce, which we did in November. So when we look at the programs involved in direct student contact, Young Scholars Program. Young Scholars is also part of our gifted program. It is part of the review that we're presently doing. It is offered in all 6 elementary schools. It continues to be a program with the hope of increasing participation in advanced, enriched, and advanced placement courses for our underrepresented students as they move through our system. AVID, Advancement via Individual Determination, is a national program in 48 states, 12 countries. It's really a push. We are trying to get students college and career ready. This coming school year, the 16-17 year, we'll have our first graduating class of seniors. We have presently 18 juniors. All of these students are on track to be post-secondary candidates. Reading intervention, these are, and some of these positions are not all full-time FTEs. For example, the reading intervention is 0.5 at each middle school. This allows our middle schools to give a double dose of reading to students that are struggling a little bit in reading. Part of the reason we allocated to the middle school is a few years ago as we looked at our Title I allocation and made a determination we really wanted to allocate that at the earliest level with our elementaries and not giving it to any secondary schools. This was a way we could continue to help in that regard. College Possible. If you go to our home page today on the website, you'll see an article about College Possible. College Possible is a national nonprofit. They typically would not pick a school like Edina Public Schools. Their criteria is really districts that have more than 50% of students that qualify for free and reduced price meals. They decided to do a pilot with Edina this year with us giving a small portion to them. We started a first cohort, 22 students. They will follow those 22 students through graduation, so those students really kind of stay with them for 6 years. We have a coach on staff at the high school. Next year, we'll be expanding to another group of juniors. So we'll have two sections of College Possible. Our academic support specialists and liaisons. Academic support specialists we've had for the last 6 or 7 or 8 years at all 3 secondary schools. Last year, as a result of a English language learner task force, we made the recommendation to hire some additional liaisons. Some of that budget came out of, some of those positions came out of this budget, some also came out of the general fund, some also came out of Title III. We found those positions very valuable for our families and students. Saturday school, we continue to operate. This year we have our highest numbers. We have upwards of 70 to 75 students coming every Saturday. We have licensed teachers that, some of our licensed teachers that are involved in it, in addition to maybe getting some additional help on math and reading. There's also some enrichment parts of the program. The transportation budget includes not just transportation for Saturday school. When we decided to put this program in 4 years ago, we really felt that it was only going to be successful if all children could get to it. But we also provide transportation for some of our AVID students and other seniors for college field trips. And then finally, we have to make an annual contribution to WeMaps for student programming. Some of that student programming you'll hear about for information tonight as we're sending approximately 20-plus students on various tours over spring break. The second piece is the professional development, of which 9.5% of the budget is allocated towards that. The first piece, again, is our contribution to WeMap. So as part of a member of West Metro Education Partner, we need to contribute a certain amount of dollars for the professional development, which comes through in cultural collaboratives. In addition, we will continue our work with CLRT, Culturally and Linguistic Responsive Teaching, with Dr. Shiraki Holly. This year, he has worked with each of our 10 sites with at least a minimum of 10 teachers a minimum of 6 teachers at our elementaries and up to 28 to 30 teachers in our secondary, doing a coaching, 2 coaching sessions on, again, how teachers can continue to be culturally and linguistic responsive. We are also working on building capacity within our own system so that we will not be dependent on him for too many more years. We'll also be spending some of our funds on IDI. We have a team of 6 of us that are qualified administrators. This past year, we administered the IDI to 1 entire school building, along with pockets of staff in some of our other buildings. This money will allow us to continue to hire more or to train more qualified administrators, and also allow us to give more assessments. And finally, a small amount for substitutes. As we have teachers going out in the classroom, working with Dr. Holly, et cetera, we are sometimes in need of substitutes, and this provides an opportunity for that. The administrative costs, 0.35% of the Director of Equity and Enrollment salary comes out of this budget, and 0.17% of a administrative assistant comes out of this, which is 6.72%. I mentioned the incentive aid, which is $93,000. So for us to be eligible for this $93,000, we need to partner with a district that would be considered racially isolated from us. By racially isolated, it would be a district whose population would be 20% higher with students that are considered in the protected class than an adjoining district. So Hopkins' population of students in what's considered the protected class is at 44%. It's over 20% higher than ours. So we can use this $93,000 to partner with them. Some of the ways we want to do that is, and we haven't landed on all of the classes and programming, but a team of Edina staff is working with a team of Hopkins staff to create student programming. Between the 2 districts, we are also partnering with Hopkins on hiring a CLRT coach, so a person who will work with both districts in a partnership that will promote the collaboration between Hopkins and Edina staff in the implementation of the CLRT strategies. This person would assist with delivery of some help sessions, would help with ongoing communication, et cetera. So that would, and that will continue to evolve as we go forward. Any questions?
Just want to mention, for the board's sake, the board is acting on the budget later tonight. This presentation is part of the requirement is to share it. Mary, thank you for your great work on all of our integration work and our equity work and the support that you continue to provide our staff and helping our learners be successful in the initiative around All for All.
Thank you. The last thing I would say, and it will come up, so part of the reason we're bringing FY16 up for revision is any time you change a particular line item by $3,000 or a budget item by more than 10%, you need to have a revision. Well, 2 things happen. When we did the initial budget, we were allocating $19 per student to WeMap. That got reduced after the fact to 16, which allowed us to have some additional money. And then as the teacher's contract got settled, it really allowed us to put more accurate numbers there. So that will come before action. And if you have any questions at that point, I'd be happy to answer them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
You don't have a question, Regina? No. Thank you, Mary. Next is general fund budget alignment. Margot, you're up.
So as the board is aware, the district has been working with a budget advisory task force to help shape our general fund budget for 2016-17. Both Margot and Susan Brott were very instrumental in working with the task force on their effort, and they're here to present tonight. We welcome them.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Dr. Dressen, and School Board. Some of this presentation, you have seen parts of it, either in Finance Committee or as a full board, and is just a quick update, but the rest is, there we go. It's hard to do left-handed. There we go. Update where we're at in the process. We have met with a budget advisory task force. Many of you were able to attend and observe in that process. The task force provided us input. Susan will go into more detail on that a little later in the presentation. We took that feedback and as an administration are bringing forward a recommendation here tonight for discussion purposes, an opportunity to have feedback between meetings, and then we will bring for approval on April 11th. These are the overall adjustments and recommendations that you'll approve in some form or fashion on April 11th. The full complete budget isn't approved until your June meeting. It takes the business office a good 8 weeks to go staff person by staff person and code by code to develop the entire budget for you. So just an update here where we're at in the process. And it is about aligning our finances to our learning, and Edina has done an excellent job over the years of educating our students and balancing, maintaining a good fiscal position, which is and a standard of excellence in that regard also. Our focus was on the multi-year approach, as we often talk about at the board level, and reductions, reallocations, and revenue generation. Our current reality that we have discussed with the task force is evolving state and federal laws and our regulations that we must comply with. The increasing funding gap, we receive over 70% of our dollars from the state, and on average, historically, we get about 1% from the state. We have been fortunate in the last couple of years, we've gotten 2%, but then our average expenditure increase is about 3.5%. And unless there's some other corresponding increase in enrollment or those kinds of things, it's hard to make up those dollars. Demographic changes and also upcoming local changes with implementation of next generation programming and facility changes. And again, we have a strong financial history. We do have stable enrollment, just slightly growing at times, but not significantly growing. Great staff, vision, and community, and of course, great students. Where do we receive our money? As I said, we get most of it from the majority of it from the state. Where do we spend our money? We are providing service to students, so it is in staff. And as you would hope and expect, the majority is in instruction or instructional support types of services. This chart presented to you in January with the initial projections of where we were at and reported that 14-15 during the audit we had ended really very well for the fund balance. And they updated of the 15-16 final budget. We were going to use some fund balance down. If you look at the red line, that is the projected fund balance, and that we needed to address 16-17. Just to take a look at the multi-year impact in 17-18. So that's what the chart looked like. We'll come back to it a little later in the presentation. And we worked with the Budget Advisory Task Force on 3 areas to consider as we evaluate different ideas that came forward. One, ensure compliance, and these were the givens. We had to obviously maintain compliance with any local, state, or federal guidelines and things you would expect. And 2, that we wanted to maintain alignment with our mission and minimize impact to our strategic directions that you can see listed there and our next generation plans. And we focused our work on phase 3, and we brought forward other previous BERG or budget process items from previous years and also ideas generated through the system, and focused on Tier 1 and 2 to consider for 16-17. Here's our previous Berg history. I believe we've gone through this before. Both 1 in dollars and 1 in percents. These charts show that we have attempted to make sure that we try to avoid the classroom or stay as far away from it as possible. We can't do that 100%, but it shows that we have made an impact in trying to stay away from that. The alignment impact, we want to focus incrementally. Our conversations with the task force focused on 16-17, but also with the multi-year ideas and next generation implementation in mind, and our financial position in mind multi-year. So it was, again, looking beyond, but also keeping focused on what we had to get done in the task we had to get done in the next 3 weeks. So now Susan will talk a little bit more in detail about the advisory task force.
Right, and just a reminder that the advisory task force did meet for 3 times, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about that. But the roles and responsibilities, we really tried to make sure that they were clear on what we were asking them to do, and that we weren't asking them to craft a whole budget, that we were really looking at them to advise administration and ultimately the school board on that. So we did focus those discussions, as she said, and sort of outlined, as Margot has stated, and outlined the different roles between the task force, the administration, and the school board. As far as the task force itself this time, we did an open call for applications, and so anybody in the community was encouraged to apply. We had over 50 applicants, and we ended up choosing about 24 of them. To really get a good broad representation, we had staff members from all levels of the organization. We had parents, we had general community members who weren't necessarily parents in the community, and we had one student who was able to make it a little bit. It was a tough timing for some of the students that were interested at the time, but it was good to have that student voice there as well. They were charged with analyzing the data that we presented to them and really advising us and also exploring some additional options. We had 3 meetings with them. Really was a short, condensed time frame, but actually kind of kept us focused, which was sort of nice. We spent a lot of time identifying what does the community value in our work in terms of educationally, and then how did we look at that for in terms of aligning our financial resources. We did have them focusing just on the reductions or reallocations in revenue, and so as you'll see later in the recommendations, there is a small enhancement. We didn't have them talking about that because we knew we wanted to kind of focus on the future for 16-17. So the outcome of those, as you can see there, and then we did at the end, we spent at our last meeting last week, we had them look at our recommendations for 16-17 for revenue reallocation and reductions, and then also spent half the time there talking about what goes to the future. How do we start looking at the future knowing that we're going to have some different kinds of instructional needs, some different sorts of approaches to learning and personalized learning, and how do we make sure that we're aligning our resources to that? So we had some great discussions with that, and with that, there were a number of people that thankfully at the end when we asked the question, would you like to stay engaged, and they said yes. And so we look at how we might be able to do that come fall, but also just continuing this communication with them right now, but then how do we continue that in the fall, obviously looking to you as a board on how you might want to continue to do that and keeping, perhaps expanding the resources as well. So we looked at short term and some of the insights that we really heard back from, and this is just a summary obviously, but really looking at sustainability. And so some of the things that we're doing next year we know are one-time sorts of fixes for our budget, and looking that we need to look at long-term as well. And really making sure that we're not making any adjustments next year that could impact the future implementation of our next gen strategic plan. So again, as we've seen with past Berg processes, we've talked a lot about how do we minimize that impact to the classroom, and continuing to explore some creative partnerships in the future. And I thought there were some great ideas that came out of there, whether it's with PTOs, ed funds, other districts, other ways to look at that.
So then the budget alignment proposal that the administration is bringing forward based on our work with the advisory task force is to be financially sustainable and aligned to our strategic plan and all for all. Only include budget enhancements that are cost neutral. We did not have enhancements in this part of the process, nor did we have enhancements district-wide this year, any new enhancements district-wide this year. The only conversations, and you'll see them a little later in the presentation, were one-time enhancements that were approved last year and a discussion in regard, did they need to continue for one more year until we get some studies further along the road. We targeted around $750,000 for the Berg process, and also kept in mind the multi-year to identify adjustments for future years 17, 18, and beyond. So I will spend a little bit of time going through the draft recommendations and then answer any questions that you have. So this first slide discusses the revenue generation and reallocation types of adjustments. Revising the post-secondary enrollment contract. There are two different ways that districts can have students attend post-secondary. And in looking at the current number of students and the tuition that the post-secondary charges, it actually is more favorable for us to switch the way that we are doing it. It generates more revenue. It is no change to the student and how we offer the program. So that was a new revenue generation. Then reallocation of staff in two areas. One to the integration fund, which Mary just reported to you on tonight. Because of the dollars there, increasing for the next year, and then also, as she talked about the WEMAP budget changing, we're able to reallocate some staff costs for cultural liaisons to that fund, and then also exploring options for reallocating some staff costs to our alternative compensation fund. Then realigning special ed expenditures to maximize the new funding formula. The special ed funding formula from the state has been in a 2-year transition and now is finally implementing to a new formula. And we've had discussions with experts on this formula and advising us on how we can maximize those dollars. So we'll be doing that. And then realigning special ed services to the current student needs. We do have some retirements in the special ed department, and then also looking at the students that are exiting the system and the students that have identified needs coming into the system, and we are able to make a reduction there. And then reductions or savings, clerical office hours, this would be a combination of subs or when we staff to come up with that. Consultant or contracted services, I do want to point out that that line item and the postage line item are switched in terms of the dollar amount. So the postage reduction is $20,000. The consultant or contracted services is $10,000. Overall, everything in the total is the same, but there would be a reduction in district-wide use of consultant services by about $10,000. And postage, we are doing less district-wide postage mailings, and so are able. We're communicating more electronically and able to see some savings there. Unemployment costs, we are able to reduce there. We have not done significant sizable staffing reductions in the last few years, and so we're seeing that expenditure go down. Transportation diesel fuel prices are very good, so we can have a one-time savings there for this year. Summer maintenance and snow removal. While it wasn't good for our students that were honored here earlier tonight, the lack of snow has been good for the snow removal budget. So we are able to take a one-time savings in that area. And testing and assessment costs, we are exploring different ways and assessing our tests and what kind of testing we are doing with students. This actually was a tier 2 reduction and at a different dollar amount, but with the feedback we received was let's move slowly into that and maybe try a lesser dollar amount in tier 1. Reductions in savings continued is looking at reducing substitute staff by $50,000. This would be a combination of looking at when we are pulling staff out of the buildings and requiring substitutes. Can we do that a little bit differently? Are there creative ways, particularly at the secondary level, where if a teacher is out, that we are able to supervise that class? Free supplies budgets, which basically means no inflationary increase. Cap on extra pay types of stipends that would offer consistency district-wide. Additional retirement savings. We also probably could save on utilities if the heat went down, right? I can see yeah. Additional retirement savings. We do have a number of retirees, and we do plan for that savings in the long-range plan, as I reported to you when I presented that in January. If we are conservative about our hiring and target ranges of new hires, we can secure some additional savings without having a strict mandate on that. But I do believe we can secure some more savings. Athletics and activities, some additional dollars there. It might be through revenue generation or expenditure savings, either one. And then reduction in special ed contracted services, that would be through our 287. We always evaluate, can we offer programs more efficiently or serve students' needs more efficiently in-house versus having them go externally, and we feel we could make some savings there. And also, there's some additional days beyond the school year in special ed and reduction in those. Did you have something to add, Susan?
I was just going to add that when we looked at the athletics and activities and our continuing investigation with that, with the activities department, is that they feel like they should be able to achieve those $20,000 without significant increases in fees, which was helpful at this time, although we are doing an evaluation on how do our fees compare, but at least for next year, it doesn't look like there will be significant increases there. And so now this is as far as we got with the task force. The next slide talks about some enhancements that we want to continue from this year to next year, but this is what we asked the task force to focus on, so it's very similar to what they sort of signed off on in a consensus gathering way. And part of it is that if you look at the task force recommendations and the language that we've put online as far as the materials from those meetings, the language has been changed a little bit, and that was really based on their contributions, saying we needed to kind of explain this in a little bit more, no offense, less of a UFAR's budget code way and more of a general public way. And so that their feedback on that was very helpful, as well as the feedback from the Finance Committee last week.
Did we say something? Yeah. So Finance Committee and the board knows that when we go through this process and we have approvals from previous years that include one-time enhancements from a previous year, the assumption in the long-range plan is that one-time expenditure is gone, so that it just automatically doesn't continue to carry forward without you as a board approving it. So we did review the one-time enhancements from last year, and have brought forward, not all of them are being brought forward, but assess them to where are the needs and where are the studies that are associated with them, and would recommend that the gifted and talented language arts staffing one-time enhancement continue for another year, and then secondary intervention support. The areas that and the secondary intervention support is at a lower amount than it was in the previous year. And the other areas that we did not carry forward were the strategic plan dollars and professional development dollars. We think we can address those in some different ways. Did you have something to add? Yeah, in the elementary para dollars. So,
which again, the principals feel they can address in a different way.
Yeah, they have some plans for that. So a summary is that we have one-time enhancements of $200,000, one-time reductions of $90,000, and ongoing adjustments of $645,200 for a net reduction or adjustment to the budget of $535,200. And I think the next couple of slides here, especially this one, really put that into perspective. To us individuals personally, $535,000 sounds like a lot of money. We have almost a $100 million budget, and while it's not easy to go through an adjustment process when you're talking about education of students, this puts those program areas where we summarized how we are spending our money for the advisory task force, summarize it in that way, asking for, well, what percentage of regular instruction is this? The question came up. What percentage of district instructional support is this? And that way we were able to frame the percentage of the reduction, and even on the overall impact to be about, it's 0.5% of our overall total budget. And then came back to the infamous graph, and then added a dotted kind of blue line there. It's the dots above the red line to show that by making these adjustments, net adjustments of about $535,000, that we do change that downward trajectory. And certainly we, on an annual basis, come back and update our projections for audit, fall enrollment, all sorts of things, and bring this forward. As you well know, it's an annual discussion, and hopefully that we can continue to, straighten the ship there, and we usually do. It always looks pretty negative, but that shows the impact of what this proposal would be, and I would open it up for any questions that you have at this time.
I just want to thank you for the great process that you guys worked on with the community. It's so reassuring to know that our community is involved in helping us make these difficult decisions when we have to talk about making budget adjustments. So I appreciate your work and their work. And also, in the end, I was, as a board member, just so pleased that we were able to do it without going directly to the classroom. So thank you for all your efforts.
They were a great group to work with, and I think that we were very focused on 16-17 because we had a job to do to bring this forward to you, but a lot of brainstorming for the future and the multi-year too, which was very, very helpful, and I think for our ongoing long-term discussions.
And I would concur, and I do want to say thank you to the team. They were a wonderful group, and it was wonderful to see a lot of engagement of some new people who maybe haven't been engaged in the district before, and it was great to get, it's always great to have some of the people that we know come back around, but to have some new faces and voices as well was great, and I know several of them are interested in serving on the finance committee, so, we have just have to find the right aspect for people to get involved.
Anybody else have questions? So the one question I have is, typically we have a much higher level of enhancements. I just want to make sure that we're considering all the enhancements we might look at as one-time expenditures. I know with construction going on and everything else, I just don't want to fly past that, because we always see that as opportunities of doing new things, or with all the changes going on, do we have the funds directed as best they could be? And I leave it at that.
So with enhancements related to construction in terms of operational costs, those would take place in 17-18, and I think as some of our discussions were taking place, even on the programming side, many of those start with the shifted 9th grade to the high school and the results of the studies for 17 and 18. And that's why it was so critical to have not just a conversation with the task force about 16-17, but start the conversation about 17-18. And for us to, we always look multi-year from a financial standpoint, but I think it's even more critical for us to be doing it this year. Susan or?
So yeah, I would just add that I think we've done a good job of just planning for the enhancements. So we've either been able to embed them into the regular budget, or we've, through the piloting process, said, nope, this isn't going to be a goal for us going forward. I think we are backing off just a little bit because we have so much on our agenda that we're pretty targeted in what we're doing. So we've been able to conserve some of that and prepare for the 17-18 year. So I think we're kind of walking that double path.
And there was a lot of comments from the task force themselves that said, that would be great, but with the construction happening and with the program changes happening, maybe this isn't the right time to be doing some of, whether it was a reduction and then we took some of that as well with the enhancements. So I do think that we're being conservative this year because there is a lot on people's plates right now.
I have a question. We talked a bit at length in committee, actually, about the special education chunk, and a lot of it sounds like it could be transparent, like the savings on fuel we've had, the savings on snow removal. You say there were some retirements and some students who are exiting the system. Is it all transparent, or are there going to be some noticeable changes in the services we provide with special education with $200,000?
So we did, based on Finance Committee feedback, because we had condensed the special ed, we did spend more time and worked with Jeff Jorgensen, the Director of Special Services, to be able to separate out in those 4 areas of special ed and really feel that that is where we're going to be able to make those savings. And with you have the revenue generation to maximize the formula, reduction in contracted services, and reduction in extra days. Feel very comfortable with those, and then with retirement and aligning staff to the student needs, because we have some students exiting the system. I feel very comfortable with that. And
Yeah.
providing, and that's transparent and providing more detail than what you saw, what Finance Committee saw.
Yeah, and I would concur with that. I mean, part of this is we also recognize that this is another area of budget that if we have students move in that need additional services, we have to respond to those too. And so then we'd have to bring the hiring process back into play if we indeed need to add staff. So I think it's very much a flow of the system. We're also doing some efficiencies in how we're servicing, and that was something that was part of the strategic plan for special education. So I think both of those are occurring. One is being responsive to how the the student population is shifting, but two, on delivering on some of the second year of the strategic plan. So this is actually improvement in services, but also creating better efficiency. It's around the training for some of our paraprofessionals, and so we are creating an efficiency out of that, but providing better services.
Another follow-up from our community discussion was about well, before we had talked about it as a hiring cap, MA 15 credits or less, and even then it wasn't quite a firm set of guidelines, it was more of an average target. But tonight I heard there would be even less of a strict mandate, is that right? So what kind of guidance would go out to hiring managers? Is it still related to just top of the line credentials when you see someone's resume kind of have a red flag, or how would you discuss that with hiring managers?
So for the presentation, we tried to not, as Susan mentioned, not have the technical internal terms in there, so we just use target ranges versus, if people aren't familiar with the teacher's schedule, it's saying MA or BA or whatever levels. But we would have target ranges on average. It's similar to what we talked about in Finance Committee. We haven't made adjustments or changes to that.
Okay.
There's more terminology for the presentation.
Number one thing that makes us excellent, that people love about our schools, are the high-quality staff. And so as we start to look for new hires, I understand that some of the best applicants may be some of the younger teachers, maybe people with new ideas, people that fit personalized learning. But I get wary about guidance from the budget folks to the hiring managers focused on the initial cost of the staff and what that might have an impact for us for 10, 15, 20 years.
I'd ask Dr. Jackson to respond to that if she could, please.
Yes, what we're planning to do is I will work closely with the principals because we do want the best teachers in front of our children. And so I will know if there are one or two applicants that they're interested in having, I will be able to look on the salary schedule to see where they are, and then we would have conversations in terms of deciding which person it would be. So the bottom line is to get the best teacher.
Right. Thank you. And then just the final one was about the activities and athletics, saving $20,000. So that was a concern, and I appreciate you addressing it. Is there any way of knowing what this looks like for a given event, or a given activity, or for a typical family that might have, say, 3 students, each of which does 2 sports and an activity? Just trying to figure out what this will feel like to the families, mostly secondary families.
In talking with our activities director, he doesn't feel that it's going to be an impact on the family directly, that it's more about looking internally. Perhaps boosters might be helping support some of that, or looking at how many coaches are needed, what does that look like? So it's less about the impact on the family in terms of we're keeping the same sorts of processes for a cap for families in terms of participation fees. But I think Troy Stein feels as though that can be achieved through efficiencies within the budget, just looking at how it is run right now.
Is that, I imagine it's not strictly contingent upon it not being on families, but is there some notion of we've got to make sure this isn't mostly on families, or?
I think what we're looking at here, and I know Superintendent Dressen has been pretty clear that these are all the targets that we're looking for, and so that's sort of the charge to go back to the department. So in any of these sorts of line items to say, here's your target, and try to find some efficiencies within that. And I didn't speak directly with Troy, but I know that was the message that was relayed back to us, was that it was a doable amount.
And just for reference, that if it were to be, if Troy, the activities director, would make a recommendation for a fee increase, that does come before the board. There would be some analysis of how we compare with other districts. So that would be a separate approval, similar to any other type of increase, food lunch price increases that come before you separately as a board too. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions? So I want to specifically note, Margot and Susan, you led those discussions, and I think you did a great job with it. I want to thank you both personally. Lead team was there every single night, and a little thanks to them. Dr. Dressen was there helping out, and of course the volunteers from the community. Thank you for your work on that. So thank you. I think we're on to our next topic, which is purchase of K-5 reading program materials.
So moved.
No, it's just a report and discussion.
Oh, man, the heat is just really bad.
But
It's better.
it's good.
Good evening, Chair Wallen-Friedman, Superintendent Dressen, our school board, and community members of Edina Public Schools. We're excited this evening to share a process and a report with you. This goes back to a great deal of work that was completed over the last school year, facilitated by our teaching and learning specialist for language arts, Caroline Linden, sitting off to my right. My name is Randy Smazel, Director of Teaching and Learning. We have Lisa Hopkins, a continuous improvement teacher from Highlands Elementary School, and sitting to her left, we have Olivia Sucho. Did I say that right? I did okay. She is a student, a 5th grade student at Highlands Elementary, and they're going to give you a bit of their insight as to some of these materials as we get further in this presentation. About every 7 years, a curriculum review process is conducted for a particular content area as part of our ongoing cycle of curricular reviews. What you and the community will be hearing about this evening is a presentation summarizing the process and outcomes of our K-5 reading review. We brought an adoption for K-5 writing to the board last year that has been implemented, and staff have been trained in those materials, and we feel that's going very well. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Caroline to get us started on our process.
Good evening, board members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight about a very complex process, and I do apologize for the density of the information on the slides, but again, it is a process that is complex and has far and long-reaching impact for our teachers and students and community. So I wanted to make sure you had all the information. So a committee was formed. It is a long process, as Randy said. We did begin last year. Actually, the process started last year, and we looked at writing materials first. The committee decided that this would be a two-year rollout. Literacy is a large part of elementary teacher and students' day, and we thought about the capacity of teachers to learn and really implement at a high fidelity level the literacy materials. So last year, being a writer was brought before you and implemented, and the feedback on that has been very good. The committee looked at best practices first, and then we developed criteria. Vendors were brought in and presented to the committee, and the committee did come to consensus to recommend Being a Writer, which is a foundational reading skills program for grades K2, and Making Meaning, which is a strategy-based comprehension program for grades K5. And these materials are published by the same publisher as Being a Writer, so there are many benefits to having programs that talk to each other but aren't necessarily one and the same. It allows for some flexibility, yet some consistency as well. One of the major things that the committee undertook was developing some very thoughtful and lengthy criteria. You do have a copy of the criteria that was used in your appendices. One of the most important things, of course, is that it is based on current standards. It also supports All for All, and I won't go through and read each of those budget items, but please know that the committee was very, very thoughtful in looking at a number of sources for best practices and based their criteria very thoughtfully with students and teachers in mind. So right now, I'm going to have Lisa Hopkins, who is a member of our language arts design team, go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the work that she's been able to pilot in her classroom this year as far as making meaning. And then we'll hear also from Olivia a little student perspective about her experience so far.
Good evening. Thanks for having us here tonight. I'm a longtime member of the Language Arts Committee and a passionate reading teacher and writing teacher at elementary. Olivia, I'm going to have you start with a couple of things that you like about the new materials.
I like that I think more because my teacher reads the stories without the pictures, so I have to visualize the story. And we use partners a lot, and this makes me think more and think in new ways. Talking about what I read helps me learn.
So the word think came up in her little section there a lot. And so thinking is paramount and crucial for our students to become better critical thinkers, thinking. And these materials provide frequent opportunities for that. They also enhance integrated instruction, and they really will allow teachers to personalize learning better than ever before. I'm super excited about that possibility. It also, we've at Highlands have been very involved with Shiraki Hawley, and these materials are very culturally responsive, and the vocabulary piece that he addressed at our last staff development in February, these are some of the best materials I've ever seen to support those endeavors with in enhancing our environments with vocabulary-rich opportunities. And assessment drives instruction, and it has a lot of new kinds of assessment that we haven't had before that will stretch us and allow lots of professional development. The personalized learning approach is a workshop model using IDR, which is independent daily reading, and the students set goals. Teachers confer with students. There's a built-in set of accountability, and there's a really nice balance between independent work and collaboration. And the culturally responsive piece, there's a really big immersion in language, both oral and written. And I have a student who raised her hand and said, the character said it in an indignant way. And so that piece about transferring the vocabulary and ways for teachers to assess it is evident. There's lots of self-assessment, lots of written response, formative assessment, rubrics for teachers, and then passage assessments that will help for the MCA development. So I'm super excited about these materials, and circling back to what Olivia said, getting our children to think as often and as many ways as we can is what's going to drive learning.
Thanks, Lisa. I don't think I need to say anymore. You'll see echoes of what Lisa shared and Olivia shared with you as we go through the rest of the slideshow here. So one of the main things that we want to make sure we're always thinking about is all for all. We want to make sure that our students are all learning at high levels. And so again, Lisa said that this is based on a workshop model, which is a balance of that whole group teaching, that small group teaching based on data, student need, whether students are on grade level above or below, and then also that individualized instruction. So there are supports written right in the materials for English language learners. The mentor texts are culturally diverse, and students are able to then apply what they're learning whole group on an independent level text. So if you're reading above grade level, you get to apply the strategy that may have been explicitly taught today to the book that you're independently reading, whether that's above, at, or below grade level. Also, in addition, this set of materials includes social emotional pieces that are built right in, collaboration techniques for our students. And so next I will talk about how that supports personalized learning and then the competencies as well. So I mentioned earlier that this is a strategy-based comprehension set of materials, and learners actively participate. They have choice, they have voice, they work both independently and collaboratively at their own pace some of the time, and teacher-directed some of the time. There are interconnected opportunities for students to grow academically, socially, and emotionally, and I mentioned earlier student choice. So competencies, how will this recommendation of materials that will go for your approval align to our competencies and help get all our students there? The Collaborative Classroom, which is the publisher's name is the Center for the Collaborative Classroom. It is a nonprofit organization. And what does a collaborative classroom mean? It's an environment in which collaboration goes beyond conventional cooperation and compliance. Students are really able to learn, think, and share ideas while also coming to value the thinking of others in the class. It really creates a community of learners through oral language development, through learning critical thinking skills and strategies, helping students resolve conflicts, and practicing compassion and empathy while learning to work with one another. So it's these skills that are embedded into the materials that will help our students not only progress academically, but socially and emotionally as well. So one of the other important pieces that we think about as a K-12 system is how will this prepare our students for secondary? And so the reading strategies are strategies that can be applied throughout the day for students. So students learn those foundational reading strategies that they can apply for just in reading, for fiction and those types of things, but also across nonfiction and content areas as well. It aligns to the standards that are have been aligned vertically, K-12. Vocabulary development, as Lisa alluded to, is specifically in this set of materials. In addition, kids learn to love to read. We know that kids, we want them to continue to read, and one of those main things is giving them that authentic experience and student choice so they become the lovers of reading. It also teaches independent work habits and procedures, and there is a very robust assessment system that is both student self-assessment and teacher whole group, small group, and individual assessments, which will create some consistency across teams and buildings. Rationale, again, the committee studied best practice, developed criteria, and decided that it was time indeed to look for some new materials. The materials that teachers have been using have a copyright of 2005. They were also written prior to the adoption of the Minnesota ELA standards and prior to Common Core. Our current reading scores, according to the MCA, which is one way that we measure student success, have plateaued in recent years. And this offers, as Lisa said, an opportunity for that interdisciplinary and integrated teaching throughout the day because it is strategy-based. That strategy can be applied in social studies. It can be then applied in science across the day. So making meaning is that comprehension-based set of materials. It includes, you can see some of the items there. There's an extensive digital set of resources. There are QR codes embedded right in the materials, so professional development can occur at the point of need all day long for teachers. And that's the K-5 recommendation the committee has selected. We know that K-2 readers need some very specific foundational skills, and so being a reader is a complementary program that goes along with that reading comprehension program, and it's a read aloud based set of materials as well. And then teachers are also going to be getting some small group teaching sets. So they'll have sets of materials that can be used with different groups of students as they're flexibly grouped based on that robust data system that comes with the program. Also, there is handwriting and letter formation instruction that will be consistent in grades K and 1 as well. So thank you for your consideration. Again, the committee was very pleased to have the ability to bring these sets of materials for you that align so well with our competencies, with personalized learning, and with our mission of all for all. So thank you for your consideration this evening.
Any questions?
Thank you, Olivia, for being here tonight. Olivia and my son went through the Family Center together and have been fellow students at Highlands, so I'm really appreciative, and thanks for staying so late. I know the beginning part of the meeting got a little long, so. In terms of you mentioned specifically that some of the work that you've done with Cherokee Holly will be especially applicable to this new set of curriculum. Can you just expand on that a little bit and maybe give us an example?
Sure. When we work with Cherokee Holly, he talks about the importance of immersing children in a vocabulary-rich environment and really exposing them to a lot, and also the piece of the oral language development. And so these materials are really rich and resourceful, and as you said, learning how to open your mind to other opinions, to share your opinions, to listen. There's discussion protocols, there's very structured ways that you can get children involved, even if they're hesitant or afraid. They're not the types that usually raise their hand, but there's ways that you can structure the lesson and the unit to get that engagement and that active involvement in a safe way, and it's very community-based. So it really supports his work, and it's infused, and it's not additional.
Excellent. And then my other question on materials was around, I noticed in the presentation, we talked a little bit about there will be specific materials for K2, I believe. What type of materials will then 3-5 be using?
So the comprehension strategy-based instruction is called Making Meaning. So grades K through 5 will use that comprehension set of materials. But in addition, since we have emerging readers and learning readers, then K2 also has that additional piece that is a beginning reading curriculum. So then that drops off after grade 2. Then students are focusing more exclusively on comprehension. So there is a common comprehension language that's going to be consistent for all K5 students, but then those young readers also have that very specific phonemic awareness and phonics support.
Excellent, thank you.
So I have a question. So I love that this has a lot of a student choice that you mentioned. So can you give me an example about what that might look like? What is student choice, or what do students have a choice of in this program?
Sure. So in Making Meaning, students have that independent daily reading time that's built right in. And so students will have choice over which novel or which nonfiction book they would like to read. And so if students need direction in selecting books, then the teacher would definitely provide that. And we want to make sure that students are continuing to push themselves. But that choice is really important in developing that love of lifelong reading. So that independent daily reading time in conjunction with that explicit instruction from teachers, that small group instruction from teachers, then kids can apply that to their daily reading time when they'll have some choice over what they're reading.
So can you help me understand if you have, for example, a second grade reader who's reading at an 8th grade level, how does this program help a teacher support that and help a student get a peer group to at what they need?
So the explicit teaching of that standards-based lesson and that strategy-based lesson can then be applied to the 8th grade level text that a second grader might be reading in conjunction with families. We want to make sure, sometimes, that's a big stretch. We want to make sure that the content and theme of that book is going to be appropriate and not just take into the consideration that readability. So we want to make sure that that book selection is also framed by instruction and guidance from the teacher if it's needed. But students would then be able to take that comprehension strategy, apply it to their book, find a peer that encourages random pairing. So we might have our highest level reader still talking about the book that was read by the teacher, because the mentor texts are also very diverse and a very promote thinking among students. So all students, whether you're an 8th grade reader in 2nd grade or a student that's struggling in reading, you're still able to have that high level of conversation, maybe not around the independent book, but around the read aloud book that the teacher presented during the lesson.
And this program produced, and I saw the little thing here, Flex grouping. So is that across the classroom, across classrooms?
So that would typically be an administrator building level or team decision. So the materials can allow for that flex grouping if that is what the teacher or the team or building decides.
I have a question about interdisciplinary flexibility, and I'm wondering if there are ways that our teachers can take this curriculum and adapt it for social studies, science, and flex it in that direction.
Absolutely. So one of the things that makes the set of materials very flexible is that it is reading strategy based. So it isn't based on the texts that teachers are using. It's really based on a variety of texts that are used as vehicles for the teaching of reading comprehension strategies. That strategy then can be carried throughout the day, whether it's in science or social studies. The committee will implement, teachers will implement next year, but then the committee can continue the work of trying to pull in content into reading and also pull those strategies out into the content. So it's very conducive for that kind of interdisciplinary work.
And then I'm extrapolating, but is this also true of the writing program? That you could apply, what I'm hearing is that writing curriculum could be used in a social studies setting, or the reading curriculum could be used in a science setting, or vice versa.
Absolutely. So while we may not purchase new materials every 7 years, we really are in the era of really looking at implementation on a year-to-year basis. How can we continue to make this better and more efficient for both teachers and students and make those connections throughout the day. So I anticipate if people will continue to come, that the committee will continue to meet in following years to continue that work and create those efficiencies and connections.
I've got two questions. One is, how do the ongoing costs of this program compare to our current curriculum at these age levels? And two, what are we giving up by phasing this over effectively 3 school years?
To my knowledge, there won't be continuing costs. The materials come with a 7-year subscription digitally. We're still working through some of that contract with the publisher. So I would not anticipate that there would be ongoing costs other than additional phases.
One of the items that the board will see associated with this purchase is a formal contract with this vendor. And we're going to formal contracts for material purchases to do exactly what you're articulating, Randy, and that is to guarantee pricing over the life of those materials, so that if we have replacement costs, et cetera, that we got that original cost as for those replacements, but also to guarantee and clarify what is it that will be supported and what will that support look like through that materials adoptions. Because without those vendor contracts, sometimes we run into issues of things being free for the first few years, a rep changes position, and then no, we have a whole new policy on how we're doing that. So we're getting all of that articulated on the front end, which helps us understand and predict our costs throughout the adoption, which helps with budgeting, et cetera. So trying to be more responsible in that area.
And then specifically, is there a reason if we had the money, would we buy all 3 phases right away, or is it also just an implementation issue as well?
I think part of it is we're still defining what the interdisciplinary themes and direction will look like at the elementary school. So the flexibility of the purchase is to get those instructional materials in place and then to follow into phase 2 with leveled libraries and classroom libraries so that they can support the interdisciplinary themes that are created as we continue to move in that direction.
Great, thank you.
And then I just have one other question. In terms of the assessments, so we're really trying, our goal is personalized learning, obviously, and so how are the assessments in terms of homework and all of that tailored to the student's level? Is everybody getting the same assessment wherever they are, same homework wherever they are?
So assessments are currently being looked at, is my understanding, at the district level, and this would be part of that. So there's lots of ways to measure growth in reading, and to know in order how to instruct a student, we need to know many things about them, one of which might be what is their independent reading level, which we can then help determine. Can be used to help determine their instructional level. So there are materials that are broadly based. So the assessments are not necessarily grade level specific. So we can, if a child is outside of sort of the typical age range, there are ways to diagnostically figure out how and where to go with each and every student. Exactly what that looks like we have yet to determine, but the possibility is there.
Got it.
I have a question about, I guess, the assessment of the curriculum here, determining its effectiveness. We've had public comments asking how do you ever determine as a district what's effective, what the decisions you make. And so obviously MCAs is one way, and those scores have plateaued, but we don't want them to rise at the extent of, I guess, the enrichment opportunity. So this curriculum seems very promising, but how will you follow up? Are you going to do a baseline of some of these collaborative assessments that the teachers have and track that over time? Are you going to survey students to see if they're reading more on their own than they currently are? Because you have a lot of goals that seem to be about individual behavior and team behavior. Is that something that you're able to track and determine if we're reading better and this is an effective choice?
So currently there are lots of ways that we collect data around student achievement. Report cards are another way. That we also have a lot of longitudinal data based on an informal reading inventory that we currently use that may or may not remain the same. So we do have that student information system that we do track student learning from year to year, and that does follow that student. So the assessment discussions, I think, will revolve around that. How do we not only assess students for individualized instruction, but how do we assess our students by grade level or by cohort, and also as a system? So definitely we will be looking for ways to do all of those things.
The world's best workforce legislation articulates that all students will be reading well by 3rd grade, so that's a mandate that we have to hit, and we know we have work to do around that. So we do have baseline data, as you mentioned, around MCA, around MAP, around local data in the classrooms. So we have that baseline now. We know what our data has looked like for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And so we'll be able to set that as a baseline and also look at how are, as Caroline mentioned, how are cohorts of students performing on these assessments around reading that are standardized and or national assessments, state or national assessments. But we'll also be able to, as we build this learner profile, this analytics and dashboard, as Steve was describing a few minutes ago when he was presenting, we'll also be able to look at individuals, which standards have they met, which standards have they not met, and we'll have that as an ongoing running record for a student in that data and analytics dashboard.
What about some of the more nebulous ones about collaborative team members, lifelong learners committed to reading on their own? Is that something that can be worked in, something that will be on part of this profile, personalized learning profile?
So part of the idea around the competencies is to continue to unpack them developmentally and then articulate and track whether or not students are meeting those competencies at their developmentally appropriate level. So those will be embedded in local assessments, and we will have to track the development of those competencies in local assessments, but they'll be done in a developmentally appropriate way. So our hope to get at some of those other things, I think, is through our local assessments. This system has a very robust assessment structure to it. It has numerous different types of assessment designs with scoring rubrics, so it really gives us a jump start to not only clarify what is it we want students to learn, but how we're going to know when students have arrived at that destination. So it gives us a very good starting base around being able to assess some of that.
That's exciting. Thanks for wrestling with some of the harder ones.
Yeah. Can I just, so this is to start, if all goes well, the fall? And roll out in all the elementaries, just so I understand when it rolls out.
Yes, looking for implementation this fall.
And then teacher training and professional development between now and then?
Yep.
And ongoing?
Yes, so I will be continuing to work on that plan, yes.
Thanks.
What we've done in the...
For a few months, okay.
Yeah, we got some materials from the vendors to try out various things, so for several months.
Excellent, thank you.
Our goal will be to offer some flexible training dates, so to be able to offer opportunities in June, offer opportunities in August, opportunities during workshop week, and then continuing on in the fall was similar to how Caroline and the team implemented the writing training, and that seemed to work quite well, so we'll probably mimic that process.
Thanks for all your work.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And I'd also remind this will go to action for at the next meeting in April, but we're also bringing a vendor contract back, because one of the things we also want to do is ensure that what the vendor says they're going to deliver on, through contract. And so I appreciate Caroline and Randy taking the lead on that. Lisa, I really appreciate you taking the extra efforts as well, because we've been implementing writing curriculum, and you've been right there on that as well. So you've been a great champion. And Olivia, you can come late to school tomorrow, I'm just saying.
Good thing you're at a late start school.
That's right. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next is board meeting dates, an exciting topic.
We'll have a presentation on that. No. We do get out in front of dates for the board meeting. Again, these follow very much the same pattern that we've had in the past. And it's a first reading. We'll take a look at that, and then probably even before we get into the year next year, we'll take one more look. The board will also at times add additional work sessions, but these would be the regularly scheduled meetings, and would ask the board to move forward on this for action in April.
I had one question on the proposed dates. The January organization meeting is scheduled for the 17th of January, which seemed really late to me, because I thought there was some limitations about us meeting before we have the actual organizational meeting. So I was wondering why we were doing that so late.
Part of it's because of the break, but also we're not having new members, so we're not going, so it's a non-election year, so we have a little more flexibility in that. And so we felt like we could allow us to get back from the late session and the late break, and then still get the work done, because we're not having a transition any board members.
And then, I don't think this matters, just October 10th is Columbus Day. Does that have anything to do with anything?
No.
Just making sure.
As long as it's not a district holiday.
Okay.
It's not a district holiday, so we're okay.
I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next is scheduled review of policies. Regina, are you our spokesperson for that?
I can be, and this one, Margot may have a little more background than I do, but in terms of 715, the Food and Nutrition Services Program, this is a slight revision at the request of the Business Services Department to clarify the time frame when food and beverages cannot be sold in the cafeteria that are not part of our food program. So as opposed to saying during the school day, this is a more specific text.
Yes, it actually refers to being sold in the building. And while the policy did have language in terms of the food service director, whether the district contracts or not, would need to be contacted, we feel it needs a little bit more, needs more strength in the language because of the recent changes in the last year with the federal requirements of what can be offered between midnight and half hour after the school day. We really do need to have our food director, food service, and dietitian involved in anything that is sold at that time. And we can have a partnership and all of those kinds of things but we do need to have a little bit more strength in the language.
So my question about that is our school day ends at 2 o'clock. Here it says 2 o'clock, but our school days end 3 and 4. How does that work?
So we could expand it to we wanted to make sure that at least it was after lunch was served, probably making a bit of assumption that, the hour between lunch and then the end of the day, that hopefully would be okay.
Yeah.
We could go to 30 minutes after the end of the day, if certainly.
I just wanted it to fit with whatever federal guidelines or that we needed. When you mentioned that, I thought, well, that's before that. So whatever you guys need is what it is.
We can consider that too.
So Margot, on this part of the policy where we're talking about, is it just the sale of food? Because I'm just thinking if people are listening to this, you have school parties and things like that where people are bringing in food. That's not being affected. This is just about the sale of food?
This is just a sale of food.
Okay.
Parties or people donating, bringing food, that's a different type of policy within the school, and health-related issues
Right.
that some of our students have, but this is specific only to the sale of food.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, now we move to our action items. The first is the Achievement and Integration Budget for fiscal year 17. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, and do we have anybody? Mary, I guess you've done a presentation on this. Anything to add? No?
No.
Any additional questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. The next is the Achievement Integration Budget Fiscal Year 2016. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Mary, you're up again. Anything?
No, just a reminder that anytime we change one line item by more than $3,000 or a object by more than 10%, we need to take this back to the board for a revision, and that is the reason I'm bringing it here tonight. It has to be at MDE by April 1st.
And you already mentioned earlier what the items were that led to that. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next motion is to approve the re-roofing bids for 2016. Is this Margot?
Moved.
Yeah. Margot, can you give us a little background on that?
I certainly will. Thank you. Happy to report that roofing bids came in under budget. I always like to be able to report that. This one was unique because we have multiple buildings, and so it was broken up into bid item 1, which was Countryside, which is the larger project, and then Highlands and ECC. The low vendor for actually both is a smaller vendor, and from a capacity standpoint requested just item 1. And so that is why you see 2 different vendors in the recommendation here. Then for the item 2, which is Highlands and ECC, we went to the next lowest vendor. And so we would recommend Thomas Finn Company for re-roof bid item 1 for Countryside, and Palmer West Construction for bid item number 2 at Highlands and ECC. And we are familiar with both companies, and they have done good work.
Any questions, discussion?
And I assume this is, I know you've done this, but I'm going to say it out loud. We're looking at the construction coming up and the current needs and whether it needs to be done now versus.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Definitely. I know the ECC, if we could, we'd hold off on that little area, but we have to do it.
I've got a question on the letter to Eric, in why they acknowledge addendum 1 for Palmer West but not for the other one. Is there some specifics about that project? And you don't have to get into it, but it just seems like they're pointing out one but not the other.
I was at the bid opening. They both had the addendum, so that might just be a typo and not explaining
Okay,
that, but I can
that's fine.
follow up on it.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. The next motion is the guiding change plan for next gen assessment, grading, and reporting. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
You got that?
Take your pick.
Your choice.
Who's going to do the honors of presenting this one?
I would just like to do an update on this document. It's changed quite a bit since we brought the previous document to the board, so you have both the old document and the new version. I would like to add also, I think we left a couple of bullets off on the why, bullets of information that we've talked about, but didn't make it to the final document. And the first bullet is that many of our students are performing above grade level, and as an example, on the last winter map assessment, 20% of our students were at the 90th percentile or higher. 1 out of 5 students across the district in our elementary grades is a very high number. At the in terms of reading, about 17% of our students were above the 90th percentile. So again, we have a huge number of students that are performing above grade level, which is a significant consideration as we move into this guiding change process. Also, we would add a second bullet that not all learners are learning at high levels, as evidenced by our significant achievement gap across the system. So I think that both of those warrant additional consideration. The process that we are laying out will be to standardize assessments across the system as part of a master plan, and clarifying what standards we'll continue to use as we move into next gen, and if there's an opportunity to prune standards from the system. And it'll also be in alignment of our grading and reporting practices to the use of standards as we move through implementing this.
Any questions?
I would just, Claire, if we could insert that information that Randy just shared so it shows up in our board packet. And secondly, if we could label the second one or do something so we see this is the old version versus new. It's not instantly clear when you look at the doc. Thanks.
We will make both of those adjustments. Thank you.
So Randy, you had said that 20% of our students scored at the 90th percentile. I thought the numbers were different than that what we were provided earlier.
And it was different than in the past, when we were looking just at the through ninth grade map. It was actually 20% at the, I can't remember, maybe it's close to that, I don't know.
I think this is in reference to the last winter map test at the early grade levels. 20% of our students scoring in the 90th percentile or higher for math. I'll ask Donna maybe to jump in on that data piece.
That's just grades 2 through 5 on the winter map math test.
All right. Any other questions?
Some people have asked me why we're no longer doing the COGAT, and that's not listed in here, and I don't want to take tons of time on it, but do we have a quick?
Microphone.
So we did do a review of the COGAT to kind of look at the utility that we were getting out of administering a district-wide assessment that took, roughly 2 class periods in some cases for our students. And the return that we were getting from administering that particular assessment seemed really low. It was allowing us to maybe identify less than 1% additional students for some advanced programming. So we think there are better ways to get at realizing, an additional dozen students or so for that time.
We use the COGAT for nothing else? I mean, does it not give us any other information in terms of helping us with possible learning difficulties or, a significant difference between someone's verbal and nonverbal?
The particular COGAT that,
Might need to switch microphones.
the particular COGAT that we use.
Switch.
Mary broke it.
So the particular instrument that we're using, the COGAT that we're using, is different than the one that our special education services might use. It's just a different instrument.
So have you substituted something else instead of the COGAT, or is it just that you think that the other tests that you've been doing are sufficient?
Right. We're giving multiple assessments in achievement, and so we feel like we have enough standardized achievement measures to kind of get at it.
I don't want to harp on this, but so the COGAT, the version of the COGAT that we were using didn't highlight any possible learning difficulty. It didn't catch anything. And because if we're not replacing with something, that's my only concern is it not sensitive enough to get at?
Right. So I think one of the things we'll do with the District Assessment Advisory Committee is look at what our needs are in that area, Lisa, especially with regards to learning disabilities and using an instrument to help us identify where kids are struggling. And the COGAT, there is a version of the COGAT that's really used quite frequently for learning disabilities. So as our Assessment Advisory Committee gets together, that probably will be something we look closely at. And it may come back in a different version for a different purpose.
Because I just, sometimes a screener, like we're even thinking of going to a mental health screener, and if there's a screener like the COGAT, might give us indications of kids that maybe need to go on for further assessment. And if we don't have that, we might be missing kids. Because not everybody's going to say, well, I think you need to go for a further assessment. I'm just looking for, is there a screener so we're not creating cracks?
So the MAP is a really good screener for identifying kids who are achieving at high levels. And so the purpose of the MAP and the COGAT, at some point, they're both used as screeners. And so it was redundant, in my view, to give both the COGAT and the MAP for screening.
Okay. I'm not just looking at high levels. I'm just looking at verbal versus nonverbal. And because I'm trying to remember the COGAT, isn't there something, it's not just math and reading, correct? Or is it? No, and so the MAP only does me math and reading, but it doesn't look at visual processing or visual spatial skills, or that's my piece that I don't think we have a screener for that type of material, particularly if someone's an English language learner. If we're getting rid of a screener, that the map is very language-based. And so the COGAT, not so much, at least on the nonverbal section. So that's the piece I'm
Right.
concerned about.
Right. And so we may look at the MNAT and some other instruments that get at our EL learners in their language.
So this is still a dynamic document to be, as we get information, might change. Yes?
Right. The District Assessment Advisory Task Force will be looking at specifically what measures we want to use.
But if there's an item on this particular guiding change document that we need to update as we go, then we would bring that item back to the board and review that with rationale.
Okay. Okay. I think, okay.
Call the question?
All in favor, vote aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passed. Next action item is world language proficiency acknowledged on transcript. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Okay, you two are going to need to get some space.
He's holding tight.
This did come before us last month. Randy, any update?
Just that in July of 2015, the Edina School Board adopted the ACTFL standards as our world language standards, the official world language standards for Edina Public Schools. There are 5 levels of proficiency associated with those standards. And this spring, for the first time at Edina High School, we will be offering world language proficiency testing to any student attempting to earn a certificate or a seal. And the cost is $20. This will be offered only to seniors. The dates are in early April. A second route to earning a certificate or seal could happen through advanced placement testing, so that would be another way that kids could go about doing that. The certificates and seals are listed below as the bullets of intermediate low, intermediate high, or advanced low. If students earn any of those levels of proficiency, then that would be recognized either through a certificate or a seal on their transcript, and also transfer to college credit in the MINSCU system. So we are just wanting to move forward with that process of offering kids an opportunity to obtain that seal on the transcript, and not having done this before, know that our juniors have opportunity next year to earn those seals if they haven't already through advanced placement. So we're just offering this as an additional opportunity for seniors.
Randy, if a student has financial needs, will we have ability to offset the $20 fee for students?
Yep, we will do that.
Great, thanks.
And
So I think I just don't understand that for seniors only, is that a one-time thing, or is that always?
That'll be for this year.
Yep.
Typically, students who would be trying to earn a world language proficiency would want to do it in their spring of their senior year, just because that's current when they're applying to colleges, etc.
Sure. Or after they finish their last language class.
Right, right.
So it's current to them.
Possible.
Right. So is there anything that prohibits us from offering this to anyone? So for example, if we have a student that is proficient in a second language because they learned it at home, may they take the test?
Right. So we do have some, for example, some heritage speakers that have inquired about taking the test. We have one student who is asked about Hebrew. We have the opportunity for Russian and Arabic, and those are kind of a case-by-case basis. There are some assessments of languages that aren't yet available, so we can't always offer everything, but we are also working with MDE to pursue expanding that database of other assessment tools. So there are other types of assessments, like I said, for heritage language speakers who are bringing a language to the district or to school, maybe from outside of their experience here, that we can recognize and provide credit for, but it's within a limited range of languages currently.
So I would hope that for those languages for which there is a test, we could offer it to whoever felt that they were ready to take the test. So for example, we have our French immersion students who may be ready before their senior year. We may have these students who learn a second language at home. And then of course, once you offer it beyond the senior year, can you take it twice? So if you get a certain proficiency as a ninth grader, I mean, unless we're losing money or something on this testing system, I would hope that we would open it up broader than seniors.
Yeah, and we know that we have opportunity to do that. This was just where we're starting this year, but absolutely students have the opportunity to retake the test and trying to gain a higher and higher proficiency with each successive attempt.
And are we doing the testing at a certain dates and time, or is this an online? How do students and families get to take the test?
So we are offering these tests on April 5th, 6th, and 7th at the high school. Jen Carter and the team over at the high school have prepared letters to send to Edina High School senior students, so they'll be getting that information in the mail, explaining the testing opportunity, and then there's a Google form link for students to register for the assessment.
And is it a written test? Verbal?
It has multiple parts to it.
Okay.
But this year it's limited to only seniors?
This year, the Apple test is limited to only seniors. If students took an advanced placement test in a language and got a score of a 3, they would earn a certificate. If they got a score of a 4 or 5, they could earn a seal on their transcript. So that's another route that students could automatically take to get a language competency on their transcript. But in terms of just the Apple test, we're experimenting that with just the seniors this year.
So
Can they get more than one seal on the transcript?
they can get multiple seals. So if a student is proficient in multiple languages, they can get multiple seals, and then those seals indicate their level of proficiency and in what language.
So I've already heard some ninth graders apparently heard about this, and they're already talking about it and enthusiastic. So roll it out for seniors, but I hope you come back to us and say we're rolling it out for whoever requests it.
I think there's opportunity, of course, for the underclassmen to participate in this next year, but I think that's the thinking is let's try it with the seniors this spring. Jen Carter and team are just putting this together in about the last month, and so now we're trying to implement it, but that's the intent is so that whenever a student reaches that competency, then they can take that assessment and then receive that certificate or seal at that time.
I just want to point out in the actual action language, it says, in the spring of 2016, Edina High School offer world language proficiency testing to any student attempting to enter a certificate or transcript. It doesn't say senior. And so if someone's reading this, they're going to think that it's anybody. And that's what I thought when I read it.
Okay, I apologize. I will enter the word senior in that front language, but friendly amendment.
Randy, you mentioned that not all languages are available for testing. I'm assuming, though, that at least all the languages that we're offering is available for testing, including Latin.
Well, actually, Latin is a unique language, and there's some dispute with MDE about the testing process around Latin, since they only assess reading, and we cannot qualify as an and that will not qualify as an assessment for a certificate or seal. In order to get a certificate or seal, the law requires proficiency be demonstrated in listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and that currently isn't part of Latin instruction. And so so there is a bit of disconnect between Latin and this particular competency requirement. The one other opportunity, though, that students have to mitigate that is that we do offer a Latin course called College in the Schools. And so when students do take that Latin course, they are automatically earning college credit on their U of M transcript. So there already is a different opportunity for students to earn college credit in Latin that is different from.
So are we forbidden from putting something on their transcript? Because I see this is an authorization from the legislature that we can do the seals in the first place. So we can't do our own plan with Latin?
There is a mismatch between the information about the seals and certificates and the requirements for the assessment for Latin. And we're working with MDE to correct that because actually the statute needs to be tweaked a little bit for Latin specifically. Latin is different in terms of the other languages. It doesn't have all of the 4 components as part of the instruction that the other languages have. And so we're trying to resolve that with MDE.
So we can't do anything unilaterally. This has to be something the state either authorizes or we do nothing.
For Latin,
Yeah,
this
no,
is
I-
a
there,
specific issue for Latin, yeah.
Thank you.
We've contacted them and they haven't budged on the seal process for that particular language yet.
And I have one last question. I know, I'm sorry. Just if students are worried whether they could pass this test, is there any downside for them taking it and not passing it in terms of, is it noted on their transcript that they tried and didn't pass? I want to make sure that people feel it.
It'll only be noted on their transcript if they earn the competency. We will not put anything on the transcript that they attempted and
People
they
worry.
didn't earn it. So
Okay.
they're safe in that attempt.
Thank you. Good question.
All right. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed. The next motion is scheduled review of policies. I need a motion to approve policy 503.
So moved.
Second.
503.
Yes. Anything new on 503?
There are some slight changes in 503. I do want to thank Sarah Shandel for her great cleanup and revision of 503 based on our earlier conversations of the policy. Based on that, there were some minor changes just for clarification in the appendix, nothing for content.
All right. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Next action item is scheduled review of policy. Can I get a motion to approve policy 902, use of district facilities?
Second.
There are no changes since we last saw this policy at our February 22nd meeting.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is information items. Rick, you have anything?
Nope, we have enrollment, we have the appendix as it relates to grading and reporting. This is a change going from a 12-point to a 4-point scale, just again aligns better with our new software system coming in. This will be effective for next year, 16-17, and the principals have worked through that. Then we have the field trip, just the informational piece on the field trips that are being run through the West Metro Education Program, and we have students from our school district attending those. And that would, we have some staff recognitions that would conclude information items.
Okay, and the 2 staff recognitions are Peggy Chapin. There was an email coming in commending her, and a second one for Cecily Bergston, an email coming in commending her also. Any other announcements? Yes?
If I could add an announcement, because it's breaking news, that Michael Tang, who is a junior at the high school, did just win his 3rd straight math bowl today. That was just announced. And then we also had a Edina High School student in honor of Pi Day, as we celebrated here at the district office, that an Edina High School student recited pi up to 509 digits. So I just thought that was a nice, that was Kenrick Bjelland did that as well. He's a senior at the high school.
I remind the board that we have a meeting on March 22nd to approve the elementary construction bids at the 3 sites, and also Chair Wallen-Friedman and I will be looking at a possible extended board meeting for sometime in April as we start getting closer to moving some of our work into action as it relates to some of the next gen efforts, both at the elementary, middle, and high school level.
And the Tuesday one is in 3 hours.
The Tuesday one is not 3.
It's a 3-minute. All right. Nothing else? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.